So, in starting with inquiry, your textbook talks about what academic writing really is. It offers a helpful overview. Academic writing is what scholars do to communicate with other scholars in their fields of study, their disciplines. The world of academia is about understanding and then contributing to the store of human knowledge. In order for these contributions to take place, scholars need to be able to communicate with each other, and academic writing is how they do that. As a college student, as someone in the world of academia, you need to learn how to do this as well. Your textbook suggests that you learn to think like an academic, read like an academic, do research like an academic, and write like an academic. Even if you're not necessarily going to become a scholar yourself. Even though it might be difficult. Often you're going to find the vocabulary and the sentence structure quite difficult in some of the essays that you read. Realize that some of this difficulty is coming from the fact that academics are striving to go beyond what's quick, obvious, and general. They have to look at things from many points of view. They have to try and come up with ideas, with connections that other people might have missed. These things contribute to longer sentences and a more precise vocabulary. So what are the habits of mind of academic writers? These are habits that you're going to try to instill in yourselves over the next 8 weeks. By habits of mind, they mean the patterns that lead you to question assumptions and opinions. They make up what's often called critical thinking. A critical thinker is constantly inquiring, welcoming complexity, and seeking and weighing different points of view. We're going to talk about these habits in greater detail. So realize that some of these habits you already have. You are essentially behaving academically when you comparison shop. It's a process that entails learning about the product in the media and on the internet, and then looking at the choices firsthand before you decide which one you will purchase. That is a very analytical process. So when you comparison shop, you are conducting an analysis as opposed to just handing over your cash and saying, I want one of those. Analysis reflects, in the best sense of the word, a skeptical habit of mind, an unwillingness to settle for obvious answers in the quest to understand why things are the way they are and how they might be different. So towards this end, academic writers will make inquiries. Every piece of academic writing begins with a question about the way the world works, and the best questions lead to rich, complex insights that others can learn from and build on. Inquiry typically begins with observation. It then leads to asking questions and examining alternatives, alternative answers. Academic writers seek and value complexity. When we rely on binary thinking, imagining there are only two sides to an issue, we tend to ignore information that does not fall tidily into one side or the other. So as you can see, thinking in this way would cause us to limit our ability to observe and understand the world around us. Such binary thinking can be found at the root of our most divisive issues. If you think about some of these issues, whether it's abortion, gun control, terrorism, you realize that if you listen to the way academics talk about the issue, you discover that scholars of religion, economics, ethics, and politics tend to ask very different questions and propose very different approaches. That is very different questions and very different approaches from, for example, politicians who would prefer to leave us with a choice between A and B. This choice is almost never a true characterization of the only choice, and it's from academia that we learn to dig in and find out what's happening between A and B. Academic writers see writing as a conversation. Of course, a conversation is half talking and half listening. The listening part of the conversation is made up of your reading. And one thing that you will have to start to notice is how the conversations are present in what you read. So you should see evidence of a conversation happening on the page, even though you're not listening to an oral conversation taking place. Because listening and paying attention to a conversation is involved, empathy is an important trait of an academic writer. Empathy is the ability to understand the perspectives that shape what people think, believe, and value. In challenging somebody's position, it will always serve you well to understand their motives for believing the way they believe. Academic writers understand that writing is a process. You are defining issues, formulating questions, developing sound arguments. It is not a bolt of inspiration that suddenly allows you to one-off an essay. This is something that you should have learned well in English 111. Often it starts with a painstaking process of collecting information and material. Once you've read and marked up the pages of texts that you intend to use, you're beginning the process of your own argument and putting your ideas down on paper. In fact, your journal entry for this week is to get you to do these things. That as you read, you are marking your text, even if it's just with a 1, 2, or 3 to indicate the passage numbers that are going into that journal entry. You're going to list the quotations that you find interesting or provocative. That's going in the table that's part of Journal 1. And then you're going to list your ideas in response to those readings, to those quotations that you found interesting and provocative. So you are annotating and you are engaging in reading actively in this way for your first journal entry. The drafting and the revising, these are all things we will do and all things that you should remember from English 111. And this ends the required reading from your textbook for week 1.